Hello, guys, and welcome back to Reverse Sweep. OpTic are your 2024 World Champions. And this week's competition was honestly one of the best events of all time. And I'm joined by my amazing co-hosts, Doug and Pat, to discuss all the action. Unfortunately, Chris couldn't make it. He's too busy dancing the night away due to it being his birthday. But we'll let him off for this one. First of all, guys, what do you think of the event overall? Start off with you, Pat.
I thought the event was great. OpTic, was putting on this event, and I think it was better than their home series event. It really did feel like an OpTic home series. I think they did a great job with production. They did a great job running the event as a whole. I think the venue was sick. We've talked about this before. Like, it kind of reminded me of the Toronto venue. Like, it's something about these hockey venues, I feel like, that are just better than every other venue. I missed the center stage look. I think that was sick. I think that should continue on for more CDL events. And overall, the venue was sick, and the crowd was obviously the crowd shut out. So it was a good event.
Yeah, I agree. I was watching it from the top area, so just seeing all the lights go on for all the little every time there's just got a green wall and you just see all the little green lights going off. I thought that was awesome. I felt like it was electric. It was the most high volume fan engaging event I've ever seen in Call of Duty esports history. It felt like we're at a live sporting event, which was awesome. I feel like for OpTic Gaming, this is like a dream come true. Obviously, this is what you're striving for. You win an event that's hosted in your hometown with the entire crowd just chanting for you guys. So congrats to OpTic Gaming. Obviously well deserved. They're the Call of Duty World Champions, and I thought it was an amazing weekend of competition as well.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the way this stage is set up with the teams both looking at each other as well adds that extra element of the trash talk and the hype and the energy that everyone's feeding off from the crowd. So yeah, 100%. I think that needs to be the standard now going into the future CDL events. Even if it's not a center stage, if it's not logistically possible, having the teams looking at each other, I think, is a really nice touch. It's more like an old school event for sure. But yeah, OpTic, holy shit, unbelievable out of them. I made some outrageous prediction in last show that OpTic were going to win the event. And if I'm being completely honest, it was a complete long shot at the time, but they played unbelievable this weekend. They just won their S&D simply. They were on that 13-map losing spree and ended up obviously catching fire on Search and Destroy again. They come in hot and they win the event. Do you guys think that was their key to success?
I think that was part of it. I think Pred also turning it around. Pred was playing. I know Shotzzy won MVP, but Pred arguably had the best performance in that grand finals. And all weekend long was lights out. And I think that was something where he was in I know OpTic was in a slump, but Pred was also in a pretty big slump and was getting a lot of criticism. Kenny, I thought, showed up, big for this team this weekend. Even had bandana Kenny on Sunday. And then Shotzzy's been playing really well this entire kind of second half of the season. So they all played really well. They did get, I'm not taking anything away. They did get the lucky draw, though. They got LAG and LAT to get to top three. But they handled New York both times. And New York basically handled everybody else. And New York just couldn't compete with OpTic. I don't know what happened in that grand finals. I was expecting it to be a lot closer. But, they played well all weekend long.
Yeah, I think that OpTic Gaming, I think once they got that reverse sweep versus LA Thieves, something clicked inside of them. Their search and destroy was obviously the issue. They went on a massive search and destroy losing streak, but they were pretty good in respawn. And then all of a sudden, this weekend, they switched some things up clearly, and something started to work and click for them. And I think a lot of things went right, obviously. You didn't lose a series. You kind of progressively played harder and harder teams. Some of the top teams that we expected to play well didn't play as well. And they caught fire at the right time, and that's usually how it goes when you win. It's a perfect storm of a lot of things happening. So I just do want to say, though, watching it from the stands, it did feel like it was an OpTic event. It didn't feel like a Champs event, because it was just banners of OpTic Gaming everywhere, and the Champs logo, the green wall logo was gold for Champs instead of it being a Call of Duty League Championship branded thing. But I don't really think that made too much of a difference for a player perspective. I don't think the players playing against OpTic Gaming were at a disadvantage or anything like that. But I definitely do think it helped the OpTic players, helped them out a lot probably. It's a confidence booster 24/7, just always being able to every time you get a kill, every time you get a 2-piece, every time you make a play, it's hard not to want to feed off that energy and just use it to the best of your abilities. So I think that it was great, honestly. It was just a great event. It was a great experience. From a fan perspective, it was an awesome experience. And just congrats again.
Yeah, I wanted to add, Doug, because we all know that almost every event, no matter who puts it on, it's going to be an OpTic-dominated fan base in the crowd. I think the one thing that was different here was like you had the drums going, right? Like that's only an OpTic event thing. You had, you had the old OpTic team doing a walkout to gas these guys up. Like you had all these like different activations that is very OpTic only, right? And so to your point, I don't think it made a difference in the players that are playing against them. But I guess my perspective is just a traditional type of person with these formats. Like I want to see Activision be responsible for putting on the best event. And I think OpTic could host multiple events throughout the year, but COD Champs specifically, I'm not taking away. They did obviously OpTic went crazy putting this event on, but I want to see Activision be responsible for hosting COD Champs because I think it should be that neutral event where there's not a bias. There isn't anyone that has special interest. And that's something that I wish we they thought about. You saw Daniel say when he did the interview was like, I want to thank all of OpTic for putting on this event, but it's like, why isn't the league putting on COD Champs? You've done it for 14 years, however long. Why is it just now that you're letting sole teams run the COD Champs event? It felt weird to me as a formality, right?
Yeah. Do you think that's like a sign of the CDL just like obviously trying to cut costs a little bit? Like
that's what I think.
Have stepped in. They've suggested we host the event. I do think that Activision and the CDL had to have had some sort of impact and obviously approved certain things, but I feel like you said it should have been more neutral. I do agree with that for sure.
That's my fear though, Mark. Like, I'm not going to say this event wasn't sick because it was. But when you really look at it, the only people that benefit from hosting champs is OpTic, right? The scene doesn't benefit. And I think that's the downside because in reality, all that's doing is creating more OpTic fans, right? Like more OpTic engagement. And the problem is the league is already, 90% dominated by OpTic? Like we've seen it. Matches that don't include OpTic have a half of the viewership. Last event, the event that OpTic got top 12 at, it was the worst viewership for any event in the last decade. And so in my opinion, I don't see a world where, it's benefiting the scene as a whole when it's only OpTic that's benefiting from it. And I think that's, it might not be a problem now, but, down the road, it could be a serious issue when people just don't care unless OpTic's playing.
100%. Touching back on the COD a little bit though. So obviously you mentioned there, individual performers. Who would you guys say your champs MVP was overall? Obviously, they gave the finals MVP to Shotzzy.
I don't think it was finals MVP because every other year it was. I actually brought this up on the flank. Every other year, I thought I could be wrong that finals MVP was what you award. But when they gave it to Shotzzy, they just gave MVP. And if you look at the performance in the finals, arguably it could have been Pred. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, I think Shotzzy got tournament MVP, which makes sense.
Really?
I think it was tournament MVP.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'd say that if it was tournament MVP, definitely in the conversation for sure. Personally, obviously they usually give it to the winner. I thought HyDra was different gravy. I thought he was unbelievable. As he always is, but I think you're usually going to give it to the winning team. I guess that's kind of the way it traditionally works.
I think HyDra was the best player in the venue. I agree with you. I think Shotzzy played the best on OpTic, but in terms of best player in the venue, HyDra didn't. HyDra was gross.
Yeah. HyDra kicked it up a whole other gear in the last few events, and I think Shotzzy, you're never going to give the MVP to the player on the losing team. It's always been a constant thing in every sport.
Yeah.
But HyDra seemed to be the peaked player of the year, and obviously Simp got the MVP, so I think it definitely rubbed HyDra the wrong way. Towards the end of the year, HyDra became the best player in the game, but ultimately, Shotzzy, I think, was the MVP for OpTic Gaming at this tournament.
Yeah. And HyDra was literally carrying those subliners boys along, to be honest. Obviously, some of them had great moments.
Mark, how did they get to the finals when Kismet was negative 90 going into Sunday?
I don't know. It was the strangest event ever in terms of individual performances, in my opinion. I don't know how the hell they even got there. And even in the final itself, that second map, he drops 15 kills. His teammates are all kind of... I think 2 of his teammates, if you combine both of their kills and doubled it, he had more kills. Or like around the same
And he
kills.
had 7 first bloods, I think, which is a CDL record for first bloods in any game, any S&D game.
Yeah. What do you think was, apart from the individual performance, is there any other reason you think that, Subliners fell short?
I don't know, because I don't want to say they got outworked or outprepared, because I don't think that's the case. I think they prepare probably more than anyone. I just think OpTic showed up. The first 2 maps, we could say they were close, but after that, man, it was like, I don't know where New York went. That wasn't the same team we saw early in the tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
it did seem like New York came out with a good game plan. Obviously, on that Karachi hardpoint, they were coming off really strong, and then everything just started to slow down for them as the series went on. So it seemed like they started to drift away a little bit, and maybe something psychologically was starting to change inside of them. Like, they were trying to fight, they were trying to keep up, but I really do think that the green wall and their fan base just really, like, it just seemed like it was almost inevitable. I remember when I went out before the final started on the analyst desk, and I'm just sitting there on the analyst desk, and I'm looking up at all the fans in the venue. I'm just like, they asked me my prediction on the finals, and I don't know, like, my heart was telling me that OpTic was going to win just because of the fan base there. And I was like, all right, well, I think New York's probably like the more peaked team right now. Like, they won the last event. They're looking really good at this event. OpTic beat them yesterday, but it's a new day. New York's going to thrive off of the fan base that OpTic has for them, and they're going to be able to stick to their game plan. But it seemed almost overwhelming, like to just sit there and just look at all these fans and to have that on your side as a player. I don't think we've seen something like that in COD esports before. OpTic always has a crazy fan base. They always have a lot of fans rooting them on at every event, but not something like this, though. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for these players, and they totally capitalized on it, and they did what they could to be the best they could. And I think just between the players coming off of that top 12 last event, showing up at this event, getting momentum throughout the tournament, and then having the green wall behind them, I think it was just a perfect storm. It almost seemed like it was only a matter of time. And that's just what it seemed like from a perspective of not being a player on the stage and just watching it happen and unfold. It only just seemed like a matter of time. It seemed like everything was going right.
I think it was over as soon as that second map, the 5-5 loss, came in. That was like the big momentum shifter there. Obviously, OpTic had the momentum anyway after that first map. New York have a really good opportunity to bounce back there. They get the first blood 5-5. And honestly, I just really questioned their decision-making in that moment, because they had first blood, they had obviously numbers advantage, and then they were like relying on a wall bang on B-bomb, which is obviously great innovation. I love that New York really put the extra like work in and really found out all these like sweaty strategies and spots. But I feel like 5-5, you have first blood, you just got to play bread and butter, simple Call of Duty and get over the line there. Obviously, then it all falls apart and they then lose that map, and then after that, it was just pretty much all OpTic bar the control. I think that
I do want to know what Kiz was doing in that round 11, though.
Yeah,
like when he was on top of the fridge, and then there was 4v3, and he just let Shotzzy come down and get a free pick on him for nothing. Like, they knew he was there. Like, I think, Mark, to your point, like that, I think if they won that map, this series would have been way different. I think that would have, gave him a little more confidence to extend this. But I thought as soon as they was 2-0, it was done.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, looking at the map setting, like as it went on, I think some of those maps there you'd have maybe gave New York a good chance of winning. But ultimately, OpTic come in and they just absolutely dominate and they clutch up when it mattered. And I think there was probably rounds in that game as well that OpTic probably could have won. So ultimately, they deserved it for sure. But yeah, guys, the last time OpTic won, we got 500 new subs. Let's beat it this time, all right, lads? Let's beat it. Come on.
They only won a major last time. It's a world championship this time.
Exactly. Yeah, we got to double it at least. 100%. But guys, moving on from the OpTic and New York chatter, we had obviously Ultra finishing off in third place. They ended up beating FaZe and taking them in the tournament on the matchup for top 4. What was your thoughts on like FaZe's performance and obviously Scrap, Draza, Beef? I think, if I'm correct in saying, Toronto won every LAN match against FaZe this year. Yeah, what's your thoughts on FaZe and Ultra?
I think FaZe got embarrassed. It's weird though, because like obviously the the matchup here is Scrap versus Straza, but I feel like every time they match up, both of those guys underperform. Like it's never like those two titans going at it. It's like their teammates carrying them. I was not expecting a 3-0. I thought Ultra was going to win, just kind of what you said, Mark. Like they've looked better in these head-to-heads, but I don't know what happened to FaZe. Doug, I'm curious on your thoughts because FaZe just went out top 6. They went out sad. This team is too talented to ever not be on a Sunday, playing on a Sunday. So I'm curious what you think happened.
Yeah, I think just looking at it, it's almost like you're never going to be perfect. You know, like I think we all just expect perfection from FaZe, and they've kind of made that their standard for 5 years. They're always in the grand finals, and then we ridicule them if they fall short in the finals. I don't like that mentality because no one's ever been able to sustain something that long and that consistently before outside of Atlanta FaZe ever. Like you never see a team sticking together as long as they have, albeit it's a team of 3. They don't keep the same 4 for 5 years straight. But I think that it's a combination of a lot of things just going wrong for them. You know, like you're playing really good competition at Champs. You are a really good team, but there is a lot of scrutiny between FaZe and Ultra, obviously. And I think FaZe is like this well-oiled machine of just we focus on what's in front of us, we keep it consistent. If we lose, we're going to get second. That's just like kind of like the MO. Like if we lose in the finals, like we lost in the finals. Like you can't win them all, but we won a lot. So I think for FaZe, it's like every dog is going to have their day, and we sit here and we talk about these guys on all these different talk shows and all these different outlets, and everyone's always getting criticized based off of the result that they get, when I think all of us know that results are not sustainably consistent, period, unless if you're Atlanta FaZe, and Atlanta FaZe just had an off weekend. And I think it's easy to say that for a lot of teams, so it's pretty simple for me in this one. Atlanta FaZe just had an off weekend. They didn't show up. They didn't play their best COD, and they're not perfect, just like anyone else. Like everyone's going to have bad days and bad weekends, and it's just like, what is this? I could count it on one hand. Is this FaZe's second bad tournament that they've had in 5 years?
Yeah, bad tournament, yeah, but they've gotten criticism for not showing up on like a championship Sunday, and now you know I mean, Doug, you know this. Like finals is the most important day of the tournament in general. And then this is the most important tournament of the year. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, what is wrong? It reiterates what we said on the last show. Like, what is wrong with Atlanta FaZe in these important moments? Like, why can they not show up when all the pressure is on?
I think they've already done that before, right, Mark? You started to cut you off, but I feel like they've already done it. Like, I feel like if you've done it and you've gotten that world championship and you got that ring, like you obviously know what it takes to do it again. It's not like you're unproven, so it's just really hard to do it, right? Like, don't we all know how hard it is to win? It's especially the world championship. I feel like it's just inevitable. Like sometimes you're just not going to show up, and it sucks. But only one team can win, and it happens. Like there's nothing else.
Have you ever had a team that talented though? Because it is hard.
Ghost, when I played you guys, Pat, yeah, Strictly Business and Ghost, we got 4th because we scrimmed OpTic every day and made them better. And then we ended up losing to them instead of whipping your ass for the ring. You know, I mean, like that was the only year.
Way, Doug. Come on now.
I mean, we beat you like what 6-1, 5-0.
Mark, what's this guy talking about? Mark, what's this guy talking about?
But that's the only time I felt that way, Pat. Like I've never felt that way ever before. You felt that way more than me, but Atlanta FaZe has felt that way for 5 straight years. So I think at some point in time, you're just gonna have a slip up. It happens.
The thing is, though, that I think it's a credit to FaZe that we are like really disappointed with them consistently losing the finals. But it's the performances they put in on the lead up to that. Look at it last event, for example, where they're 3-0 everyone, and then they come into finals and they look horrible. There is something going wrong. So what is that? You know, what is going wrong there? Obviously, you're playing against the next best team, but you're making them look easy earlier on the bracket, like they did New York last event. And obviously today and this weekend has been like a completely different issue for them. They've performed like much lower to their standards, but I think now it's going to be in a conversation of, do they make a team change? Because that's definitely going to be a conversation that's had for sure. And that's kind of my next question for you guys. If there was to be a FaZe team change, who would you suggest they change?
I'm split on this, Mark, because my problem with Atlanta FaZe making a change is like whoever they drop, right, they instantly improve another team because that person is going to another top 4 team. So that's kind of the dilemma they have to face. In reality, I don't see a world where they should do a drop one guy, pick another guy up. I think they should strictly do trades. Here's something I don't think will happen, like a Scrappy for Celium, right? Like, I don't think Toronto's gonna want to lose Scrappy. I obviously don't know his contract situation, but at least in that world, it's like you're not necessarily letting Cell walk and just trying to pick up a guy that then Cell could go team up with Scrappy on Ultra. You would at least do a trade where you don't have to fear for another team improving the same way. So I don't know. I mean, this trio in general, like Draza, I think played well. I mean, I know he had a pretty bad last match, but as far as this team goes, he played really well all year long for this FaZe squad. I would probably argue he's been their best fourth, right? Like outside of Alec and Slasher, like I think he played better than both of them. I don't know. I really don't know because it's obviously not a talent thing at this point. Like there's a clear mental game aspect that this trio seems broken, especially in those important moments. And then you also, on top of that, have to ask, like, is it even worth breaking up? These guys average a grand final. Like, yeah, they're not getting it done, but like these guys are going into every year and their average placing is like second. And it's like, do you break up? You know what I mean? Like, obviously everyone wants to win, but it's like if there's not a clear upgrade path, I don't think they can. And I don't know about you guys, but barring like some major changes for some other teams, I don't see a clear upgrade path for Atlanta FaZe.
Nah, I don't either. I think the one I would probably look at would be Celium. But again, he's unbelievable. And that's just...
He's going to improve whoever he goes to.
Yeah, exactly. So like you said, that's the kind of conundrum here. And honestly, it would just be making a change for the sake of making a change. They would just need to do some digging internally, honestly, and try and figure out the root cause of maybe not playing up to their standards in the finals, because it has been a glaring issue for a while. But like you said, they're consistently performing well. This event was a bit of a one-off, but yeah, I think they should probably just stick out and figure things out. Obviously, there's a lot of noise though when they don't perform as you'd expect. Another sort of team that really kind of on the opposite end, Thieves performed really well this weekend. Obviously, they were 2-0 up against OpTic. Could have went on and won that series. They end up finishing off top 4. I think that's a really good placement for them, considering at the start of the season they went for a complete rebuild option. They were looking really bad initially, like the first stage of the CDL, and then they've kind of made a couple changes, obviously stuck around Dan. But yeah, I think Dan honestly looks like one of the best players in the game right now, and I think he's definitely going to be of interest to a lot of those top 4 teams for sure.
Yeah, I think his phone's blowing up. And it's weird, right? Like, again, who is going to get dropped? Like, I think Dan is going to get interest from these top 4 teams, but who are like? I think what I'm kind of interested in is like the butterfly effect that's going to happen, right? Like, let's say who's going to be the first one to make a move, and once they do, like, what's gonna transpire from that move? You know, how far is the dominoes gonna trickle down? I think Dan played phenomenal. Mark, I gotta say this. Like, it makes me wish the Gwyn guys would have happened with Abuza and Ghosty and Gwyn at the beginning of this year, because I think all those guys ended up being respectively the best players on their team by far. I think Abuza is going to be another guy, right? Like he had a phenomenal tournament. But yeah, Ghosty, obviously, Doug, you team with Ghosty. I know you have some choice words, but I thought Dan had an insane tournament run, and definitely helped propel those guys to get top 4.
Yeah, I know how Dan moves. He's very driven, and I think he's very smart as well. So I think that he kind of just did everything he could this year to be the best that he can and elevate his team as much as he can and put the pieces together as best as possible. And I think that the team was really good, honestly. Like, watching them play, I was rooting for them this entire weekend. Like, my heart kind of hurt when they lost, especially that Rio search to Toronto, and they got eliminated, because they looked really good versus everyone they played. And it just seemed like it seemed like a Cinderella story potentially could have happened for them, right? Like maybe they could go to the grand final, maybe they could close it out and win the whole thing. They were all peaking, they were all playing very well. Their game plan was very ironed out. You could definitely tell that they were on point. They had some great wall bangs, like Jodeci's wall bang on Rio's search. So I look at the Thieves and I was just like super proud to see how far they've come, especially from the beginning of the year to now. And it just seems like if I was them, like I just want to keep the thing going, like just keep that team going and keep them consistent. I think that all the best teams in the league have something that lasts consistently for a long time, and they just keep it going every year. Just keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Like you're gonna have hiccups in the road. Every team that wins the World Championship, not everywhere, but like Thieves had a dead last when they won a World Championship. OpTic had a dead last when they won a World Championship. I mean, I just think that if you have a team that's consistently getting better and they're young, just keep them going, right? Like, you're only going to get better. Even if you get bad results, you're still only going to get better. You're going to have better team cohesion too. So I think that, especially with how competitive Champs was, Thieves was one of the best teams here, and they showed up and they proved it. And unfortunately, they just came up short like everyone else did, except for OpTic.
So you think they should stick? You don't think like they should make changes? Like let's assume none of them get poached, right? Like you think this 4 should stick as is?
Why not?
I see some upgrade paths for them. Like you're telling me you wouldn't want Abuza on this squad to run with Dan? Abuza's a free agent.
I don't know. I mean, I just think that it seems like it's working and it's only getting better, and like they can only keep on improving. Like I would probably just want to keep Nasty on the team just because, like, they all seem to like each other. They all seem to get along. They all seem to be hard workers. So
my fear with this squad, I was gonna say my fear with this squad is like I feel like it took them a long time to improve, right? And now it's like I think they mastered Modern Warfare 3. But going into a new game, will their learning curve be slow again? Like I that's my fear. I feel like they're going to start slow, and yeah, they'll get better over time. They'll learn, they'll improve. But I feel like it just took them too long to master MW3, and I feel like they could be in a similar boat here, in going into a new game.
They did make a few roster changes throughout the year too. I feel like whenever you make a roster change, it's like I don't know. Like personally, like when I was playing on Boston Academy, I made 0 roster changes for 2 years. Like I didn't make a single roster change. So like I don't know. Like, I just think that you put the team together the right way the first time around, and you iron it out, and you consistently work with it, and you just get better from it. You block out anything else, and you just focus on your team, and that's it. And I think if Thieves is to continue to do something like that, it's only going to benefit them because every time these teams make changes, they're expecting to improve and improve and improve. But ultimately, like, how many times have we seen teams make changes and they're just drastically better immediately? Like, have you seen much of that in the CDL era? Like,
not unless you're doing like superstar moves.
We've only seen it in superstar moves, and at least in my perspective, when like Toronto Ultra was a great example of it. Like, okay, like you got the guy that's winning first place in every challenger event. He's dropping 1.3s every event, and he's also replacing a player in Cammy who's like a top slayer on this team. That's been really good, and now the Ultra are just going through a low. Okay, now they're going through a low, and we have this guy who's on an ultimate high, peaking at the highest level. Boom, let's put him in here. Like, I feel like that would work because it's a one-person change, but in general with Call of Duty, I think like grinding with the same guys, as long as you know it's the right guys and you grind with them, what I've seen in my experiences is that it always ends up with wins. It always ends up with consistent results, and it always ends up with better tournaments. I think we put too much stock into, right now I need a win. Give me that win. I need it right now. We're going to get this guy. We're going to win right now. Boom, let's do it. You know, like you got to get guys that like each other that also make sense, and then just play every day. Play. And that's what Atlanta FaZe has done. So,
what I think
or
Thieves
it could be like OpTic Gaming and just actually get literally the best player from each team and the best players.
You can buy
like,
whoever you want.
Yeah, for sure. Like, dude, if we could all do that, like, yeah, let me go get HyDra and Scrappy and Simp and like, sure, of course you're gonna win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. My take is on the whole thing is I believe they should stick going into next year, but I think they should have either as a signed substitute or like at least have like the clear next best guys for those potential like problem areas lined up so they're ready to potentially make changes as we go on. Because obviously, like making wholesale changes doesn't really make sense, but I think making small minor tweaks to the team can obviously improve things. But I definitely think after their champs result, it probably makes sense for them to keep it rolling into next season and have some plan Bs set up ready to go. That's if Dan doesn't leave. But I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
what his
dude, it's
contractual
going to be hard,
situation is.
man. I think they're going to get poached. That's the problem. Like, that's another thing. Like, if Dan's gone, what do you do, Doug? Like, if Dan's out, do you keep that core and find another guy to replace him?
You can do that if you want to. I mean, maybe you get a Booza. Maybe have a Booza replace Ghosty. They both dropping crazy numbers and they're really good AR slayers. It just depends on the team culture and how they see who's the identity of the team culture and how do they want to build it. Like right now it is Dan. Dan is the team culture. He's the center of it. So they build it around Dan. So you just find who your center is and you build around that.
Thieves are not going to surely let Dan go. Like, if he's still contracted, I obviously don't know his contract situation, but surely, like, they're not.
I mean, Mark, they let their whole World Championship roster go.
Yeah, but that was clearly like some sort of budget cut situation for sure.
Yeah.
Like they literally completely downgraded their team. Obviously they had places, people going to different places, but I think that was kind of a bit of a different spot, to be fair. Right, guys. We actually have an audience survey that we're going to be putting in the description below. You can click that link. We're looking at ways on how we can improve this show. So we want to hear your feedback. So make sure you click the link below if you want to roast us, if you want to give us some constructive feedback, make sure you hit that link. It'd be appreciated. Next topic we've got, guys, is it's actually a bit of a fun one. OpTic Champs winners, right? If you could combine, so at their peaks, you've got to pick 4 players. The OpTic Dynasty and this current OpTic squad, how does it look?
Wait, hold on. What's the rules? We pick 4 from both teams?
So combined roster of OpTic Champs winners, essentially. If you were to make a roster out of those players in their peak. I'd personally have 4 more than many are.
I'd probably take the whole Dynasty roster, the original Dynasty roster. I don't think I'd take Ken, Dashy, Pred, or Shotzzy over a single one of those 2017 guys.
Maybe Shotzzy at a peak. Maybe you can make an argument.
But over Seth? Are you taking him over Seth?
It would have to be over another sub, so it'd have to be over like what, Damon?
Damon,
like,
yeah. I'm not taking, bro. I'm taking the whole original team.
Yeah, I just feel like no disrespect to the new players, and it's not like I'm like, and it would be easy to say recency bias with the new team, but I don't know. Call of Duty is just different now. Like, I feel like it's just really hard to replicate what the Dynasty team did, to be honest. Now, maybe if they run it back next year and they win another one, maybe you just argue like you take that whole team over the Dynasty team because they just won 2 in a row.
Let's just go one by role. Like, are you taking Bruce over Formal?
No.
No.
Are you taking Kenny over Crimsix?
No.
Are you taking Pred over Scump?
No.
Are you taking Shotzzy over Damon?
Maybe, probably not. No.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the thing.
Bro.
It's like maybe Kenny and Shot for the way Kenny and Shotzzy play. Like, but it's like I can't put it over. No, like I can't.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard. Like, you know what all those guys brought to the table, and like obviously we know what these new guys do too. But there's like a mentality game to tie in. Like you can't just look at raw skill in this case. For me, I'm taking the original team for sure.
All right. I think I can agree with that. Another question for you guys. What's your predictions for the winner of COD Champs next year? Early prediction.
Can I go first, Mark? I got Toronto Ultra, the 2025 World Champions, Mark.
Oh,
locking it in.
Man.
Locking it in.
You've not made that prediction before, have you? That's like a new prediction, right?
First one ever. Yeah. 2025, always.
Good stuff. Yep. Yeah, I think I'm going to follow you up on that one, actually. Yeah. I'm going to follow you up on that one.
I see some Toronto upgrades this offseason. That's what I'm predicting here.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, I'll let Doug go, but I actually want to jump back into that topic quickly before we move on to the next one. Doug, who's you got winning next year?
Next year, I mean, we just saw OpTic go from 12th to 1st, and maybe we could see the same thing with Boston Breach. They just went from 12th place this season, so it's a brand new season next year. None of this stuff is going to matter. Clean slate for every team. Let's go with Boston Breach as your 2025 Call of Duty World Champions.
Who's going to be your finals MVP?
That's a good question.
Boston Breach squad.
Oh, he's going to have to drop intel. Oh,
that's what I'm saying, Mark.
You've got him.
We're going to have to see. I mean, you trying to play, Pat?
No.
Oh man, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
I tried, Mark.
Doug.
I tried.
Yeah, good try. All right, guys, we've talked about champs quite a bit. Now we have a new event on the horizon, not a part of the traditional CDL calendar. We have the Esports World Cup taking place in Saudi Arabia in around 4 weeks' time. Obviously, it's going to be almost like a pro-am where you have 4 of these challengers teams coming into it. I don't know if you guys had much opportunity to watch the challengers event this weekend, but out of those teams, do you see any of them making any noise? Taking some series off any pro teams?
Maybe. I mean, I think they could take series off the pro teams, but I don't think they'll make noise into the top 4. Right? Like I think like the 5 through 8, or the 5 through I guess 11 in this case. I could definitely see these challenger teams causing some upsets in that bubble for sure. I did watch the challenger finals. I was surprised that Alex's team won a best of 7 the way they did. They went 3 S&Ds and a hard point. That was like a really weird way to win a best of 7. But yeah, I don't think any of the challengers guys have the ability to beat the top 4 teams at the Esports World Cup. But I do think that we will see some noise out of them, and we will see some upsets for sure.
I've got a bold prediction, and that's my team to win the event.
The whole thing, all of it.
Yeah, the whole thing. It's going to happen. Just watch. Just wait. I know we just got 4th in challengers, but we're going to win the pro event. For sure. Yeah. Without a doubt. Nah, trust. But honestly, just to talk on that a little bit, we're actually going to get some good practice going into this event. We're going to be boot camping out in the US, so we're going to actually get to play against good teams. No disrespect to the other European teams, but the practice for us this year has just been diabolical. We rock up to the challengers events, and it's just completely different. And we know that we've got the talent to be able to do well. So this practice is going to be crucial for us. So I'm looking forward to it. The format itself is going to be interesting as well. They're doing it, the GSL style groups, and then it goes from that into a single elimination bracket. So potentially some crazy results. Teams that might match up early doors and knock themselves out in the single elimination bracket, which could be absolutely crazy. You could see some freak results there. But overall, I'm just super excited for the event. I think it's going to be obviously a nice little cherry on top at the end of the season. What's your guys' thoughts on the event as a whole? And do you expect sort of a lot of these teams in the CDL to make changes for it?
I don't know. I don't fully know the rules for the roster changes. I don't expect any of the top 4 to make changes. I think that would kind of be foolish at this point. Yeah. We kind of know, you could roll the dice on any given weekend and one of those top 4 teams could win. I do expect roster changes from everyone else, though. I think we even have a really odd situation, which I'm really curious how it's going to play out, where the Boston team wants the challengers team that qualified through, I think, omit, right? Who's going to get the rights to that squad? I think there's a lot of weird questions to be answered, but I do definitely see some roster changes occurring from these CDL teams that are going. Because they all know they got to improve, right? Every single one of them. Maybe not LAT.
The way I look at it is, I see it like this. I'm pretty sure the roster lock is tomorrow for EWC. So I don't know how many of these top 8 teams are going to make changes going into it. I mean, maybe, but I don't see many of the top 8 teams changing personally. And I feel with the bottom 4, they're all obviously going to have roster spots, except for I think maybe. I don't even know if it's announced or not, but there's a lot of rumors going around. I just think that there's obviously the 4 challenger teams, and then you have the league teams, and I think that it's hard to get players in the top 8 teams in the CDL. So you're kind of working with getting players from the bottom 4 teams in the CDL, and then also looking at challengers do I want to do something with the bottom 4 of the CDL, mix and match a bunch of different guys, bring them all together? Do I want to get a team of challengers that's really good? Well, the top 4 teams in challengers are all locked in. So, you can't get them. Do you want to get someone that's 5 through 8 at challenger on LAN? Maybe, maybe not. So, I think it's a little bit hard for a lot of these teams, especially the bottom 4 teams. I think for the top 8 teams of champs, though, it's probably going to just be run it back, go into the event, see what happens. That's the way I see it going down.
Yeah. I think for the bottom 3, bottom 4 teams, actually, what am I talking about? for the bottom 4 teams, it's a golden ticket at the end of the day. Usually you don't qualify for champs, that's it. You're on vacation in July and that's your season over. But they've got another opportunity now where they could, in theory, win more prize money than some of these teams that have placed in the top 6 all season, just by having a really good weekend. So definitely a good opportunity for those teams to make amends for poor seasons and also trial out new things, trial out a new roster, whatever that may be, to set that foundation for next season. So I think overall the event's a very positive thing for the scene.
I will say I wish I was still competing. To have 2 back-to-back champs, basically, that's insane. From a prize money standpoint, strictly, they literally have $2 million tournaments within the span of a month.
Yeah. Who do you guys have winning it then?
Toronto Ultra. Hey, dog, I like that. Mark, I told you the 2024 World Champions, Mark. It was the esports World Champions. People mixed it up. Mark. That's what it was.
Yeah, fair enough. I think, honestly, for me, I am going to make a bold prediction, and that is OpTic are going to have a stinker on S&D again, and they're not going to win the event. They're going to place top 6, top 4. And in fact, no, there's no top 6. There's no top 6 placement, actually. I take that back. They're going to place top 4. But New York are going to win the event.
That's a good prediction.
I think when you win, it's hard to maintain that, wait. What we've seen in the CDL.
So it's single elim, so everyone's going to get 5 through 8 that loses round 1?
Yeah. Teams that lose round 1 out of groups, 5 to 8, yeah.
Damn.
Top 4 sounds good, Mark. That sounds, because I think you're right. When they won the first time, they got dead last. Then they just won again. So it's if you could get it back to back, that would be insane. But you got the one, you got the big one. You got the one that you really want really bad. And now it's you're gonna really want this one bad too. But it's gonna be hard to sustain. I agree.
The biggest task Damon Barlow and JP and all those guys there, the coaching staff have, is keeping these guys motivated and keeping the same mentality that they've had over the last couple of weeks after getting shit on for their major 4 performance. They need to keep that same mentality for the next 3-4 weeks and finish off the season strong, because they definitely could go back to back. They're definitely one of those teams that can do it. It's just going to come down to them being able to sustain the same success they've shown in S&D this weekend. That's how I think it goes anyway. All right, guys, we're going to move on to some community questions. And we've kind of somewhat answered some of this question, but it's a double-barreled question, so we'll answer the second part. First part says, do you guys see Toronto or FaZe making a roster change if they don't win champs? Obviously, we kind of spoke a little bit about FaZe. Do you guys have Toronto making any changes?
I think they should. Not for EWC, obviously, but I do think they need to take this offseason to upgrade a little bit more. I hate to say this. I think Insight is an incredible player, but I think at this point, I just don't think his style of play matches what this team needs. And so I think, we're talking about the Celiums of the world, maybe not getting dropped off FaZe, the Dan Ghosties being available potentially. I think they should take this opportunity to upgrade that mini-art position. I thought Insight played great this weekend. He had the FaZe series. He was great. I just think in general, if this team wants to succeed long term, I think they just got to make that kind of jump to improve. I think Envoy obviously had an insanely stinker of a first half of the season after their win, but he turned it around. Basically, he's been lights out ever since. He kind of came back from that slump. But I think this team needs an upgrade in that mini-R role.
Sure thoughts, Doug?
It's hard to say that when you already have the best of the best. When you look at upgrades, you also have to think about how players are going to play with each other too. So I feel Insight and Kleenex have had consistent success for a long time, and it's almost the same thing with FaZe. You're looking to find. I think if we could all look at it in the perspective of, I want something that's going to consistently give me a chance to win when it comes to a team. I think that's what we looked at, Pat, Mark, you as well. I want something that every time I go into an event, I know I can show up to this event and I have a chance to win. That's always been like the idea. And if you go into an event not having that feeling, it's a bad feeling. So I just think that we've gotten to the point where it's like it's hard to upgrade anyone on Ultra as well. You know, like what are you gonna do? Like,
I guess I want to say, like, I don't think Jamie Insight should be dropped. I just think they should explore upgrade paths for him. And if they can get an upgrade, then they upgrade. To your point, Doug, I mean, it's not like that's going to be an easy task to do, right? That involves some very good players having to be available to upgrade. But I just think, like, I'm at this point with Toronto where I really think they should consider pack-a-punching that role. Because I think Insight has his moments. Like I think he was there almost near MVP in Major One. That was probably the best COD he's ever played. But it's like he can't do that consistently. And when he's not doing that, I feel like he's just playing too slow. Like he's not in the damage enough. That's kind of where I said, like, I just don't know if the pace is gonna play well for them. Maybe I could be wrong with Black Ops 6, right? Like a new game. Insight could be absolutely gross at it, and it could fit him a lot better because that's kind of more Cold War like. But yeah, that's the only spot I think on this team I would upgrade. I don't think you can upgrade Kleenex. Like he plays obviously a unique role. It's going to be impossible to find that. Scrappy's locked in, and then Envoy. I don't think you're going to get an upgrade from him either. So that's why I kind of target like the one role in the main AR role that you can get upgrades for potentially, and that's the only one I would look at on this team.
Yeah, I think you've kind of touched on it there a little bit, and I think this off-season is going to be very interesting because in theory, I don't actually know if any of the top 4 teams will make changes based on the fact that there's really not players to take unless they're doing like these crazy trades, but like realistically, you know, OpTic aren't going to change. Do New York make a
I think it's
well?
going to rely on FaZe. I think FaZe is going to be the catalyst here. Like, FaZe try and do something? Because if not, yeah, I mean, like, if FaZe don't do anything, I don't see Toronto doing anything. The New York one's weird because it's like, obviously Sib, I think Sib has earned his spot. In my opinion, Sib and HyDra are like the 2 guys on New York right now. Kismet and Skyz you could potentially look at. The problem with Kismet is like he plays such a unique role that I don't know if you're going to be able to find someone to replace him. Granted, he threw up some absolute stinker series at Champs. Like they won a series and he was like neg 45. Like I've never seen that in my life. That was one of the worst. Like he had like a legit 0.6 in like a big match, and they somehow won. And then Skyz had a pretty, I think, average tournament overall, but you kind of know what you get for Skyz. So it's kind of the same thing, Mark. It's like I feel like these teams have to wait to see how the dominoes fall, because I don't think New York's in a position to start the dominoes.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's just going to be crazy if FaZe.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy if FaZe do try and make something happen, but well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see after EWC, because that is the next thing coming up, and none of these teams are going to be making any changes for that. And on EWC, I have a question from Christian Bird, and he or she asks, does EWC open the door for expansion?
I don't know. Like,
yeah, I'm worried about expansion.
We've been thinking about expansion since year 1 of the CDL, and it's been 5 years now. So I don't know if it's going to happen.
I don't think it opens the door for expansion. I think what it does open the door for is other teams acquiring teams in the CDL who want to get out. Right? Like we've seen that already a little bit. Cloud9 just got the New York Subliners. There's a big question mark around LAG. Carolina, I think you just saw one of their parent companies sell out of the League of Legends European stuff. And so I think before expansion happens, I think what you're really going to have is these premier esports organizations, kind of acquire some of the bottom tier CDL teams. I think that's going to happen before we ever get an expansion.
I do think though, like on Doug's initial point about like we've not seen it so far, but now we don't have the buy-ins, right? So like surely there's 4 big organizations that are willing to be involved in Call of Duty, but just didn't want to spend.
But you may not have the buy-ins, Mark, but the current teams have the talent, right? And so like even if you do get an expansion, like if you're a New York coming in, you basically have to pick up a challengers roster. And then at that point, like you may be looking at like, oh, we might be the 13th best team or whatever the case is. And so I think that's what might stop some of these premier orgs from jumping in, because they would rather just acquire a spot and get CDL caliber players from the get-go.
Yeah, you're literally going to probably be like one of those bottom teams for like the first 3 to 5 years if you've been in the league, until you're actually able to acquire talent or new talent comes through, etc.
Yeah. Or if you just come in, you're like, fuck it, we'll offer the most amount of money to whoever is a free agent. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess that's the only 2 routes they can go down, pretty much.
Yeah.
Another question from Jake. I can't even pronounce this surname. I'm going to try my best. Jake Schreiber, something like that.
Right.
Sounds right. HyDra, it's more of a statement, but he says HyDra is the season MVP. Anyone who thinks Simp is more valuable than him is faded. What's your thoughts on that, Doug?
I wouldn't say you're faded if you think that Simp is more valuable than HyDra. I think HyDra used the motivation of Simp getting the MVP to even turn up to another gear. But then you can make the same argument that if HyDra got the MVP, that Simp could have turned up to another gear. I think it's just a tit for tat thing at that point. And no, I don't think HyDra deserved the MVP just because the whole season consistently, I think Simp's placings were better. His performances were better. His team's performances were better throughout the entire
overall. Yeah.
He just had a better overall year. Like, I don't think HyDra had a better peak at the end of the game. HyDra had the best peak at the end of the game, but HyDra didn't do that the entire year. If HyDra did that the entire year, if they won a second event, if they have a better overall land placements consistently throughout the entire year than FaZe, and he had better stats and everything than Simp, then yeah. But and then you make the argument: is HyDra more valuable to New York than Simp is to FaZe? Who knows? Like, it's just a hard thing to say, but I just think that Simp did have the best year.
I would probably argue that last thing is true. I think HyDra is more valuable to New York than Simp is to FaZe. I think that's a fair statement to make. What'd you say his name was, Mark? Jake
Schreiber.
Yeah. I think there's a case to be made, but I agree with Doug. I think when you look at the entire season, who was better? I think it was Simp. And I think that's the problem with a lot of MVPs and a lot of just like voting in general is it's really hard for people not to take their bias of like the last thing they saw out of it. And yeah, if anyone's voting in the last month or two, it's HyDra all day long. But if we go back to December of 2023 at this point, like it's Simp.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's definitely Simp over the season. HyDra is probably more valuable to New York, for sure. Be interested if HyDra became a free agent and then was on one of these teams. It would be absolutely mental.
That would be terrifying for New York, though.
Oh yeah, they're chalked. Not like they're still going to be like they're still going to be a top half team for sure. But I think
they lose their championship caliber almost right away. I think.
Yeah, I think that's be disastrous from New York's perspective if they were to let him go. And it's gonna, if he is a free agent this year, I'm not entirely sure on his contract status, but if he is a free agent, he's going to be getting paid a bag. He's going to be on the super ultra max. So yeah, shout out to HyDra. He's definitely going to be getting paid nice next year if he's a free agent. We have another question from. Let's read this out. We have a question from Justin Green. He asks, question for next video. OpTic was going to pay a lot for Pred. Should they have bought Pred earlier in the season? I guess last year, I guess they're talking. Would OpTic have won more? Sorry, he said.
Probably, but I think they're okay to save whatever that absolutely ridiculous rumored buyout number. Do you remember that? It was like 600,000 or something insane, whatever his buyout rumor was. So I think looking back, I think OpTic's fine with how it played out. I don't they got him for free basically and lost out on 2 events last year.
Yeah, I think it was perfect that they didn't have to pay any money and they were able to wait till this year. And like in hindsight, they won 2 events this year and they won champs. So no, I think that's just kind of like I don't think it ever makes sense to pay $500,000 for a player, even if it was Simp mid-season, like, or end of the year, unless it's like for sure that one player is getting you over the hump. Even then, that's a huge risk and that's a lot of gamble. So no, I don't think that it made sense. I think they did a great job. I think OpTic couldn't have done a better job with getting what they wanted to get from the season.
Yeah, for sure. You're not recouping that cost anyway. I mean, obviously there's a lot of expenses that go into play in general in the CDL, but for sure. Anyway, one more. This is actually from Luke. This isn't from any fans, but Luke asks, Team of the Year. Who's your Team of the Year? Obviously, the one was voted by the fans, but would you guys agree with that, or would you change up anything with this Team of the Year?
I'd keep this Team of the Year. I think it's a good one.
You keep it OpTic? Is that what you said, Doug?
No, he said he would keep the Team of the Year.
I would keep the Team of the Year.
The way it was.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
What about you, Pat? Would you keep the Team of the Year as it was announced, or would you have changed anything? Obviously, that was Scrap, Simp, HyDra, and who was the fourth? Was it Celium?
It was Cell, right?
Yeah. No, was it? I honestly should have looked at this.
I don't remember
this question. I can't remember who the fourth was.
I would definitely keep Scrap, Simp, and HyDra for sure. I think those are the for sure three.
Maybe you got to put Kenny on it. Maybe you got to put Kenny on it after Champs.
He was.
Yeah, Kenny. But that's the thing. Kenny had a really rough spot too this year. Yeah, I don't know. Let's go in.
Yeah, honestly, I think I would just keep the team.
If it is Cell, yeah, keep it. Yeah, watch it not be Cell, and we just
want to morons. All right, guys.
It is Cell.
Want to give a massive shout out to everyone for obviously getting these good questions in here for us. Make sure you guys keep them coming. Hopefully, we're not entirely sure our plans about ESWC or EWC yet in terms of a show, but get your questions in the comments section below and we'll try and answer them in the next show, wherever that be. I'm not entirely sure if it will be in a couple of weeks or if it will be next season, but we appreciate all those questions, guys. Make sure they're getting in the chat in the comments section below. That's it from us here at Reverse Sweep. I appreciate everyone who's tuned into today's episode. Make sure you like the video, keep up those amazing comments and questions below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and have a fantastic week, guys. See you later.
Later, everybody.